order.
Good evening. Today is April 25th, 2022 to 6:22 p.m. in the evening here, and this is the Streets and Sidewalks Committee. And to my right is Councilwoman Lynn Snee, and to my left is Councilman Samuel Pierce, and I'm Bob Phillips, the chair of the Streets and Sidewalk Committee. We've got a couple of items on our agenda tonight, and first item is a vacation of a 3-foot alley of record. And Mr. Titterington, are you going to provide the staff report?
Sure.
All right.
So this is the property at 121 Public Square Northeast in the family abuse shelter, I guess, where Thrush was, next to the old shoe repair. So that property has been for sale. There's a purchase contract on it, and as they were going to close after, I don't know, a century maybe, the bank recognized that there is a really old alley that was built over. Won't tell you why the alley existed before, but the records were so old that they were hand scripted, and I believe we had a facsimile and not even the originals. We worked with the property owner to get a surveyor. It took quite a bit of time to redraw that, and as a result, we now are ready to vacate this alley. It is the same property owner on both sides, so it's a unanimous, streamlined vacation, but we do need council's approval, and since there is a pending sale of the building, we are asking for emergency legislation.
I do not have any questions on this. Do you folks have any concerns or questions?
No.
Any other council folks have any questions or concerns on this matter? Anyone in the audience have any questions or concern for this matter? Seeing none, what is your pleasure?
Move forward as recommended.
Okay, it's unanimous with the committee to move forward as staff is recommending with emergency.
Thank you.
And item number 2.
We have another vacation.
Yes.
This is between 1291 and 1285 York Lane. This is not really old, nor are we asking for emergency legislation, which I know is the first time you've heard us say that this evening. You have a map, a drawing in your packet. The Troy Planning Commission, I should have mentioned, they recommended with the last item, they also recommend for this vacation that the council approve that. It is 100% petition approval by the abutting property owners to vacate it, and we are asking for council to do the same.
And for the record, for those viewing at home, what was the purpose on the vacation?
It was a public walk, and it's not needed anymore.
Got it. Okay. I do not have any questions on this item. Either of you two folks have any questions or concerns? Listening none?
No, sir.
No. Any other council folks in the audience have any concerns or questions on this item? Anyone in general have any questions or concerns on this item? Seeing none, what is the committee's recommendation on this item?
Move forward as recommended.
All right, it's unanimous with the committee to move forward as staff is recommending with this item. Any other items to come before the Streets and Sidewalks Committee?
Yeah, two more.
Second page.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that was a trick question?
It was. You passed so far.
You're halfway there, Bob.
Yeah, there's the second page. The third item is a recommendation to dedicate right-of-way. It's 1.385 acres in lot 6503 that's related to 1415 West Market Street, which is along the north side of West Market Street between Fenner and Edgewood Court and I-75. The Troy Planning Commission met on April 13th. They've recommended that the City Council accept the dedication of this right-of-way as part of a redevelopment of the adjacent piece of property.
I do not have any questions on this item either. Either of you folks have any questions?
No,
Okay,
sorry.
got it. Any other council folks in the audience have any questions on this particular piece of legislation? Any other members of the public out there have any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, what is your pleasure with this report? Okay.
Move forward.
It's unanimous with the committee to proceed as staff is recommending on this item also.
And for the record, we were not asking for emergency legislation. And I say that to segue into the fourth item where we are asking for emergency legislation, and that is to increase the authorization of several of our capital improvement projects for this year, specifically related to the West Main Street Reconstruction Project Phase 1, the West Main Street Duct Bank project, and the annual road repaving program. Chose to include all these in one memo and one recommendation since they all relate to the same thing, namely hyperinflation that we are dealing with right now. So to talk about the West Main Street Phase 1 project is the first project. Back in October, our engineer's estimate from our consultant was approximately $6.3 million. That is the amount that was included in the 2022 budget. By the time the ink was dry on the budget and January came around, the estimate was revised to $7.7 million. That's what we went out to bid with as an engineered estimate number. Prior to opening bids, however, we reviewed at least one more, or one other, if not multiple other, but at least one big similar project in Dayton, and had to revise our estimate from 7.7 up to $9.2 million. And the reason you have to do that is that the state law requires that any bid that's opened to be accepted needs to be within 10% above or below, you can go either way, of the engineered estimate. Otherwise, you got to throw out the bids and rebid the project. This is a very complex project. It has several funding sources, state, federal, and local, and it does have a time element to it as to when we accept, when we start, and so being as close as we could and anticipating the correct engineer's estimate was essential. I will say that we received 4 bids, one of which was disqualified by the state due to some disadvantaged business federal regulations, but all 4 bids that were submitted were fairly close to each other. It's a complicated bid in that there were several elements that we had to evaluate. First of all, there's a base bid, but that base bid was not what's known as a constructible bid, because the base bid did not include stormwater and street lights, at least the street lights in the first maybe 2/3 of the phase. Alternate 1 or 2, we are doing a significant amount of stormwater, so we needed to include stormwater costs. Alternate 1 or 2 had 2 different options. We have to pick one of those. One is an ODOT standard, the other is a city standard on the type of materials. So to get the apparent low bid, we had to include the base bid plus alternate 1 or 2, and in this case it would be 1 because that's the least expensive alternative. Then we also had alternate A or B, which dealt with streetlights, poles. One were the standard poles, the other were the decorative ornamental. We want to do the ornamental because we've got some streetscape and we've got some area along Kettering Health that we want to dress up. But for apparent low bid, we had to add alternate A, which is the cheaper of the 2 alternates, to come up with the bid award. We think we've done that. There are several eligibility criteria that the apparent low bidder had to jump through or satisfy, which it appears that they have. recommendation is now that we be at a project authorized at $9 million. I don't have the exact number that we're looking for, but I believe it's at 8.5 million-ish, is what the base plus alternate 1 plus alternate B would be. We are still evaluating some scenarios related to maintenance of traffic and how we can streamline timing and costs by doing, some strategic shutdowns of the road, but we're talking to the apparent low bidder about some options there, and that should only reduce the amount up to 180,000, I think. Not sure that we will hit that number. That's basically shutting down the road, probably a little bit more than we'd like to. But nonetheless, $9 million authorization would cover any possible, we think, cover any possible contingencies. So that's the first project. The second project is the Duct Bank project.
Let me stop you there.
Okay.
Before you go into the Duct Bank or the third one, do you want to explain the funding sources for the first item? Just to follow along, keep those numbers.
I was going to discuss that at the end because the number 1 and 2, the fund gaps.
Okay, we'll go ahead with your.
Okay. West Bank, or the Duct Bank project, that was authorized by council in November at a cost not to exceed $700,000. We asked just prior to opening the bids to increase the estimate to $1 million because we had to adjust our engineer's estimate. Bids opened on March 9th. We had 2 bids submitted. Both bids exceeded the 10% ORC allowance of $1 million. The low bid was about $1.2 million. And so we set a new bid opening for May 4th. Our current engineer's estimate is $1.5 million. There's a lot of pipe work and a lot of delicate, I guess, labor that's involved with it. And this is one of those that we feel like we've been chasing our tail trying to keep up with the estimates. The staff assures me that we'll stay at or within the 1.5 million, but that does have a contingency in it in case there's anything that comes up. So if I go back a second, West Main Street Phase 1, the gap was $2.7 million, and the Duct Bank is $800,000, so we're at $3.5 million gap, just so we're playing along. The annual paving program, council authorized us at $1,010,000 for repaving a list of 26 streets, 13.5 lane miles. That was to include a little section in Riverside Cemetery, the local road in there. We opened bids on March 30th, and we had 2 bidders submitting. They both submitted bids in excess of the 10% allowance. Rather than going out for rebid, we reviewed the apparent low bid. We're asking that the council authorize $1,115,000 so that the lane miles on 22 of the roads can be done, can be repaved. In that case, we would fund that with $1 million that was budgeted in 2022, and we would also use $115,000 of water funds to pay for sections of those roads where there were water main breaks. And we got very specific on the areas that water funds could be used, as well as we had a couple of streets where the water main was replaced entirely. And so when we did the math based on the unit prices that we received, that was approximately $115,000. So in that case, we're not asking for more money we're asking for an increased authorization so we can cover the bid, and that keeps us within the 10% ORC limit. How are we going to find $3.5 million? You'll see in the report a list of 6 concrete numbers where we can find some of the funds. $1 million that we've allocated for enhancements out on State Route 55. That is something that we continue to pursue, but given the timing, probably or most likely won't happen in 2022. If it does, we'll come back and we'll talk about maybe other avenues to explore. We have $250,000 in the ARPA allocation for industrial park improvements. We have $200,000 that would be a future reappropriation that would be a part of the sale of the old Fire Station 11 when that's consummated. We expect to save at least $500,000 from the construction of the new Fire Station 11. We have a couple of projects that we can defer into at least 2023, one of which is the recreational trail tied to the low dam removal. That project at the federal and regional level is going a little slower to get started. And then we included $100,000 to replace some decking at the Marina building. We are not real confident in the bids that we would expect to get, and so we want to defer that project as well and see what it's like, the atmosphere is like in 2023. Those 6 items total $2.25 million. We have other potential savings. One I mentioned, the maintenance of traffic and any kind of creativity we can pull out of the apparent low bidder on West Main Phase 1. We are also analyzing the West Main Phase 1 to look at the amount of utility improvements or replacements that are part of that project compared to the actual bid that was submitted, and there may be some opportunity to increase the amount that those utility funds pay. We're not there, we're still analyzing that, so that's a potential. And then fund balance reserves, as well as you should anticipate, not sure when, but hopefully sometime this year, a recommendation from the city auditor and myself regarding a bond borrowing that is to include a portion of West Main Street, as well as a couple of other smaller projects. So when taking all those into consideration, then that's where you get the $3.5 million.
Okay. Now I understand why you were out for such a long walk after work this evening. I'm surprised you have any hair left there, Mrs. Rose. I've had a conversation with Mr. Titterington about this, so I don't have any questions. I just have huge grief with the federal government and the way that they've helped us along here. Do either one of you two have any questions or concerns on this item? Yes, please.
With the West Main Phase 1, even with the adjustments that we're talking about, would we still have businesses open? Would they be accessible?
Yes, that would be a requirement. Anything that we do, we would maintain local traffic in some form or fashion. Now, with any kind of road project, there might be small, short-term, intermittent, hour here, hour there, but even in that case, we may be able to work with the contractors so that they're providing that kind of work, say crosscuts across an intersection or straight across Main Street for a utility or a service line. Maybe we can have them do that after hours to minimize any disruption, but even if we were to close the road, we always make sure that there's local access for the businesses and the residents.
Okay. That's just my main question, make sure people still had access.
Mrs.
Just-
Dean?
I want to make sure I understand. We have bids in hand for West Main Street Phase 1, that if this bidding authorization's increased, we have an apparent low bidder, we can potentially move ahead.
Correct.
But the other two projects will have to be rebid.
The
once.
Duct Bank opens May 4th.
Okay, so you have that one scheduled, but.
And the paving has been bid already.
Okay.
It's just a matter of increasing the authorization to stay within the 10%.
Okay, that's what I wanted to understand. Thank you.
Okay, got it. Any other council folks have any concerns or questions on this item? Mr. Schilling, please come to the microphone.
Is there, Jeff Schilling, is there any chance going back to the state and saying, hey, can we, we're getting money from the state to do this up to a certain point. Can we go back to them and say, hey, this thing's, can we, look for some additional grants or however this program works so we get some more money from the state or again, I know the Fed has that infrastructure money out there. Could we apply for some of that money to help fill in the gap?
We are discussing with ODOT the availability of additional grant funds, perhaps additional safety funds, having hopefully middle of next month a larger regional meeting with again, hopefully state and federal legislators to have that discussion as well. But we are in contact with and in communicating with ODOT specifically to see about this project and whether or not they can increase grant amounts.
Because it's their highway, right?
I agree with you, it is their highway, but it is within the corporate limits, so we have responsibility.
And then the other question is, at what point do we reach where we say we can't do this thing?
Can't do what thing? The
Can't
only
do
thing
this
that's-
project, or can't, we're 50% over budget right now, approximately, and we've got phase 2, which we haven't even, we know we're working on that can of worms now, but when you look at and then we got phase 3, which is out there, we're gonna do this in 3 phases, right? 2 phases?
2 phases.
So 2 phases, so again, do we reach a point where we say we can't afford this?
Had we gotten worse bids than we got, we might be there sooner than you think. The Duct Bank is a question we're still waiting to address with May 4th bid opening. As far as phase 2, when we're talking with ODOT about phase 1, we are reminding them of phase 2, that it will be much of the same. And unless the hyperinflation reverses itself, which certain folks at the federal level seem to think that might happen, not sure who agrees with them. I certainly don't. But that's continued discussions that we'll have with ODOT prior to bidding, because we haven't bid phase 2 yet, but we will be in the next few months.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? General public in the audience, any questions or comments on these 3 items? Okay, seeing none, what is your opinion about this and how should we proceed? Okay.
Move forward as recommended with emergency.
All right, to answer your question, Mr. Schilling, it's coming closely to an end for me for spending money on it. But it's unanimous with the committee at the moment to go ahead with these 3 items as staff is recommending. Any other items to come before the Streets and Sidewalks Committee?
No, sir.
Okay, passed again. All right, thank you. We are adjourned.